This is Build Back Better Caribbean, where we listen to Caribbean civil society share, in their own words, their experiences, ideas, and perspectives for creating a more resilient and sustainable Caribbean future. Meet Beverly Le Blanc, Director of the Achievement Learning Center in Dominica.
We were established to fill the gap that existed in access to children with special education needs in the mainstream classroom. Our vision actually is to become the center of excellence in Dominica, where children and youth with disabilities can be empowered through education, vocational and skills training, and ensuring that they can be functional members of society.
The Achievement Learning Center was created in 2011 to facilitate access to education and foster social acceptance and inclusion for youth with disabilities in Dominica. The center functions as a school as well as an expert resource on support and advocacy for persons with disabilities. In Dominica, as in other Caribbean islands, universal secondary education guarantees access to education for all young people. But what happens when a child or young person is unable to truly engage with this opportunity due to learning and/or behavior challenges or disabilities? The Center's core mission of championing the rights of persons with disabilities has produced several individual success stories. An even more powerful accomplishment is the way in which the Center's advocacy has influenced popular understanding in Dominica about what it means to live with a disability.
And one of the things that we have done is actually we have created a greater awareness of what a disability entails. Because in our society, when people hear of disabilities, they look for somebody in a wheelchair. They look for somebody with a Down syndrome. They look for somebody with a visual disability. And so when they meet a child who is probably doesn't have a physical disability, they would say, "Then what are you all doing to that school?" And then we would use that opportunity to let them know you have the visible ones and you have the invisible ones, but we meet the needs. So we were able to use what we do as an opportunity to create that awareness. We've had marches called Light of the Possibility, Break the Stigma, Build Inclusive Communities, and it is all about not just educating all the children that come to our center, but also their families, helping their families to appreciate them and see the gifts in them, and also society to understand that despite their disability, there are possibilities and they have potential, and we are bringing all that potential in them.
The Center's project development arm designs targeted interventions to clear a path for these young people to participate in and make meaningful economic contribution to Dominican society. Ivy Yorke, Disability Programme Officer at the Achievement Learning Center, explains how the organization's advocacy and tangible support move beyond the classroom.
Besides the gap that we are attempting to fill with regards to access to learning in the mainstream schools, we also, like I said, I work mostly with projects at the moment. And one of the projects that we are presently working with is related to skills development for students, especially students who are at risk. It's for people ages 15 to 30, but the people that we have specifically chosen to target are those who tend to be at risk in the high schools. Like Ms. Le Blanc said, because of universal education, compulsory universal education, we meet a lot of children, a lot of teenagers who are in high school, even though they do not know their basic letter sounds, they do not know basic mathematic operations, they do not have reading comprehension skills, and they are placed in remedial classrooms where they are left to themselves, they drop out, or even if they do graduate, they are unable to successfully find jobs. And what we are doing right now is we are helping those young people to develop the skills necessary to have a better chance at being successful in the workplace, of becoming employed. That's also something that we do.
Making an unexpected entrance into the Achievement Learning Center's story has been the COVID-19 pandemic. In March 2020, the center, like other educational institutions, complied with the government mandate to suspend activities supporting national efforts to interrupt the spread of the virus in Dominica. Unfortunately, this happened shortly after the center had been evicted from its physical home, a space they had intentionally designed to facilitate the learning needs of their clients. Beverly and her team at the Achievement Learning Center were therefore tasked with crafting a new chapter in the center's story. They had to ensure their work continued despite the challenges of a pandemic. Focused on this mission and aided by technology, the center has been able to not only continue its operations, but also achieve a key collaborative milestone: enriched student instruction and development plans created in partnership with the parents and guardians of the young people they support.
When we began developing our plans with how we were going to approach the parents, because the parents, some of them were asking questions, some of them were entirely silent, none of them really knew how we were going to continue with the children's lessons after being evicted and being unable to meet in any public spaces because of social distancing and all the protocols related to COVID-19, as it had just begun becoming more rampant in Dominica at the time. So what we decided to do was to develop a blended approach, which Miss Liba touched on a bit before, for meeting the children, for dealing with the children. And initially it began with strictly online lessons and went down into a blended approach afterwards. So what we did was we had two meetings with the parents. We had meetings during the ending of summer before school start back, and then we had meetings with them at the beginning of the new school term. And in those meetings, we put up a Jamboard and we use lots of colors to make it more interesting and stuff. And we asked the parents to meet us halfway. What can we do to help your child? And what can you do to accommodate your child's learning? What times are you available to sit with your child at the computer to help them with their work? What times would you need to have for yourself, because we understand that you are employed or you do this and you do that and you may not be home all the time? What differences have you seen in your child since your child has been home because of the pandemic? Have there been any positive changes? Have there been any negative changes? Has it affected their learning, their functional skills, and their social skills? Those are questions that we ask the parents. We ask the parents for their collaboration in learning, because normally in general school settings before COVID and all of that, before COVID, I was teaching. I wasn't the Disability Programme Officer before COVID. Before that, I was a teacher. And what happens is parents send their kids to school and the school is now responsible for the child's learning. But now because of COVID, we got to the place where parents need to be directly involved. Some sort of guardian needs to be directly involved in the learning of the child. And so we had to ask our parents or our guardians to meet us halfway in teaching these children. And for the most part, we have been successful in doing that. The parents, once the restrictions were lessened, once we were able to come into physical contact, that's when we began using the blended approach, where some lessons are online and some lessons the teachers would go to the parents' homes to teach the students. We have students who come down to our capital and meet with their teachers so that they can learn. And we were able to accomplish all of this. We were able to continue school because of the cooperation of our parents.
The mixed blessing of COVID-19 has not only yielded progress towards the center's goal of increased parent and guardian participation, Beverly and her team are also basking in wider appreciation for the center's expertise as educators of young people with disabilities.
So I think what it has done is that it has created a greater sense of understanding of the importance of having a special education plan. And I believe it has opened the doors for us to be the consultancy organization and the center of excellence we want to be, that they will come to us. And they really come to us. Teachers come to us. Parents come to us. Parents that are not even within our school. Teachers, if a teacher is having a regular setting, is having a child with a struggle, they were like, I'll give you Miss Libra number at Achievement Learning Center. So apart from the students, we have children from other schools, children from other communities. Their child has issues with reading, their child probably not functioning developmentally, they call us. So it has opened that door for us people can reach out to us, which in itself is strengthening our programming.
This pandemic has revealed and reminded of pre-existing inequality and inequity in many societies. This includes Dominica, where persons with disabilities lack social protection and access to services for a more complete enjoyment of their human rights. For the Achievement Learning Center, the pandemic pause has produced the right conditions for designing the interventions needed to improve the reality of persons living with disabilities.
COVID-19 allowed us to begin developing a database of persons with disabilities island-wide. We had the desire to begin developing this database before COVID-19 because in Dominica, there are no actual laws or policies with regards to people with special needs. And to develop policies, they have to be backed by data. But we had no actual premise for gathering the data before. And when COVID-19 started, that was when we began to see that, hey, people with disabilities are being marginalized when it comes to assistance, when it comes to getting help in this time of crisis. And so we had the opportunity to begin. We developed a project proposal and we got approval from UNICEF. We began working hand in hand with the Ministry of Youth Development, I believe, and we are now going out into the different communities and gathering qualitative data to develop a database that we can use, that we can send up so that the Minister of Youth Empowerment can bring to Cabinet so that we can begin getting policies pushed forward with regards to people with disabilities, them getting help, them being protected, things like building codes that accommodate them, things like them being provided assistance in public areas, stuff like that. We don't have laws for things like that yet. And we are now beginning to get the data that can push those policies forward.
The chances of being born with or becoming a person living with a disability are equal for us all. The work and advocacy of the Achievement Learning Center is changing the social landscape for persons with disabilities in Dominica, one success at a time. The center's core values, calmness, comfort, consistency, social justice, tolerance, respect, cooperation, integrity, and competence, underpin this commitment and vision for persons with disabilities in Dominica to access all they require to realize their full potential. This podcast is produced and presented by the United Nations Information Center for the Caribbean Area, the voice of the United Nations in the Caribbean. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. For more content in the series, find and follow this podcast on Spotify, Google, Anchor FM, and other popular streaming platforms.